Hello everyone, my name is Dharmendar. I am soil scientist by education. For the past 20 years I am working in alternatives to chemicals in agriculture. So today I would be talking about soil health management in natural farming. I would like to introduce how this session goes. So we'll get to know the significance of natural farming, why it should be promoted, and in that the importance of soil health, and also we'll go a little bit into the different soil health principles and practices in natural farming. We'll also look into one case story, try to answer the most frequently asked questions. So coming to the introduction, we all know that we are having a crisis in agriculture. So we are using a lot of chemicals. All the inputs in agriculture are externalized and the agrarian livelihoods are very much in distress. Farmers are migrating and there are so many crop failures. Farming families are in indebtedness. So there are so many economical distresses that we can. And also with regard to environment, we know that a lot of pollution is happening, soil degradation is happening, and there is a loss of biodiversity also. And on top of that, the food that we are producing is not having enough nutrients. It is estimated that only less than 1/3 of nutrients are there in our current foods compared to what we had 50 years ago. Business as usual is not the solution, and governments are now actively gearing up to find alternatives that are sustainable, of which natural farming is very effective and feasible. So these natural farming achieve soil carbon sponge, synergies in crop ecosystems, building resilience, increased productivity and incomes, and there is minimized risks and costs also. So to implement natural farming, there are certain principles and practices. So we have to maximize the output from the agricultural fields. So several principles and practices we have to consider. There are 9 important natural farming principles: crops, crop diversity, minimum disturbance to soil, integration of animals, biostimulants, organic matter addition, local seeds, pest management, and no use of agrochemicals. We'll go into each one of these in detail. So first one is cover cropping. Why is it important? What natural processes are there that will help the soil through cover cropping? So of all the living organisms, plants have the ability to make food through a process called photosynthesis. In this process, they make a lot of sugars. So of all the sugars, only 60 to 70% is utilized by the crop for its development, for branching, for fruiting, for root extension, all of that. Remaining 30% of the root exudates, remaining 30% of the sugars are released into the soil through root exudates. So this is called as rhizodeposition, the deposition of carbonaceous material through roots. So because of which lot of carbon is getting into the soil. Our soils have very less carbon. That is why they are very much degraded and they are not yielding good crops. And because of these sugars getting into the soil, a soil food web is formed under the ground. So all the microorganisms come to the roots for these sugars and they mobilize nutrients and water to the plant. And these micronutrients, when they grow in big numbers, they are eaten by higher microbes, and those are eaten by nematodes, kind of higher organisms. And those nematodes are further eaten by beetles or some other higher organism. So a food web is there, active soil life is there when crop cover is there. So for all this thing to happen, for all this soil life to get food, there has to be living roots. There has to be a live cover crop all the time. If we are keeping the land fallow for a month or two, the carbon getting into the soil is stopped because photosynthesis is not happening. So soil life cannot survive. So therefore we have to ensure that there is living root activity throughout the year as much as possible. And also because of this photosynthesis, plant is converting gaseous carbon dioxide into solid soil carbon. So we have a problem with higher amounts of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which is causing greenhouse effect and all climate change related catastrophes. So we have to bring down the gaseous carbon into soil carbon, which is called as drawdown agriculture. So how can we maximize this? If we are planting a lot of diverse crops in a small piece of land without one being a competition to the other, a small food forest or a 5-layered multi-tier cropping system, we'd be able to harvest a lot of sunlight without much competition, and we will be pumping a lot of carbon into the soil. Once carbon is there, soil becomes very productive. The structure of soil gets changed. So therefore crop cover is a very important aspect. This rhizodeposition happens much when the crop is in vegetative stage. So we have to see that a lot of new crops are always replacing the old crops. So through this process of rhizodeposition, the buildup of carbon in the soil is 5 to 30 times faster than other methods of applying organic matter or organic carbon. If we have to heal our soils, bring them to a very good productive stage, we have to practice cover cropping. And when you are choosing economically valuable crops like leafy vegetables, small cover crops, fodder crops, all of that, they will fetch income also, even during the off season. And next we'll talk about polycrops and the crop diversity. So monocropping is not found in nature. So our agriculture fields, when they are having monocrops, they are not able to yield much. So nature teaches us that diversity is crucial. So we have to ensure a lot of crop diversity in our fields. So there are important studies worldwide from long-term experiments that say that at least 8 to 12 different species have to be there growing together in one piece of land. And they have to be at least 4 dissimilar functional groups of plants. So plants should not be identical. They should be of different root systems, or annuals, or shrubs. All the mixes have to be ensured. And the long-term experiment showed that if you increase the number of species in a field, the overall productivity of that piece of land improves. You can see the graphs where as the number of species are increasing over time, the quantity of biomass produced is so much. And you can also see that when you are going for polycropping with different root depths and root spread, you will be changing soil in a very positive way at greater depths. And also for farmer, it's a risk avoiding strategy. So even if 1 or 2 crops have failed, other 6 crops would fetch income for farmer. So these diverse crops also act as natural barriers against pests and diseases. So polycrops are a must. If we are not practicing polycrops, if we are just going with monocrop or just one intercrop more, and we will not expect this much results in natural farming. So we have to learn from nature. And also, third principle is minimal disturbance to soil. As much as possible, we should not disturb the soil. When we disturb the soil through tillage operations, very often, what happens is that whatever little soil carbon is available is oxidized. It is lost into the atmosphere. Our soils have very less carbon, and through cover cropping we are fixing a lot of carbon dioxide into the soil. But with tillage practices, all that valuable soil carbon gets oxidized and released back into the atmosphere. And also tillage disturbs the soil life at all. All the soil life is working for the benefit of crops. If you are disturbing all that soil life, for example, earthworms have tunnels, many beetles have their own burrows and all. And those burrows over time, become pore spaces and help the infiltration of water, retention of water, easy penetration of plant roots into depth of the soil. All of that will be just breaking down all the aggregates, all the collapsing all the tunnels by tillage operations. So we have to understand that tillage operations causes lot of damage to soil health. Our goal is to create water resistant soil aggregates. Soil particles come together as aggregates, and that structure is very good for crop growth. But with tillage practices, all these soil particles are again disintegrated and they are lost by wind and water erosion. So soil particles have to stick together, and in the long term they will not be broken by the forces of water. They cannot be washed off by runoff or wind erosion. So our goal is to make our soil like a sponge that can absorb any amount of water, and it is not prone to runoff losses. And the fourth principle is integrating animals. Like I said, monocropping is not found in nature. Likewise, nature doesn't farm plants without animals. If you see in a forest ecosystem, there are several trees, shrubs, herbs. Along with that, there will be a lot of other animals also. Herbivores, carnivores, birds, insects, all of them. They all live together in an ecosystem, making it very productive. So if we have to mimic that integrated system in our farms, we should be integrating the livestock. Traditionally, farming has agriculture and animal component combined. In the past 4-5 decades, we have seen that agriculture is separate and livestock is separate. So we have to see that the animal integration happens again. How in natural farming we can bring back animals is that we can build dependencies like animals require fodder and we plant fodder in our fields, and animal byproducts, dung and urine, they can be converted into manure or even biostimulants. Natural farming mostly capitalizes on the use of biostimulants. And the next principle is biostimulants. Biostimulants by definition is any substance or microbes applied on plant or in the rhizosphere to stimulate and benefit the nutrient uptake or impart resistance against stresses and increase the crop quality. So it is not necessarily the nutrients that a plant require. They can be other substances or microbes which will positively impact crop growth. So that is why we are not looking at how much nitrogen is there, how much phosphorus is there in a biostimulant like Jivamruta or Ghanajivamruta, but we are using them as biostimulant. So that is the difference. Natural farming capitalizes more on biostimulants that are locally produced. For example, dung, urine, all are locally available, and we are not requiring them in huge quantities, bulk quantities, because it would be difficult for a farmer to mobilize that amounts of raw materials. Therefore, biostimulants are required in a very low concentration, low quantity. It will be easy for farmer to practice on a larger scale also. So there are some biostimulants that we use for treating the seed like Bijamruta, and for soil application Ghanajivamruta, and for foliar application and soil application, that is liquid Jivamruta. These three are very popular, and by using this we are improving the productivity of the soil. Through seed treatment, what we are ensuring is that there is a coating of biostimulant around the seed. So whenever the time is right for a seed to germinate, the favorable microbes are always present on its surface. So immediately microbes start associating with the seed and the processes start. It will increase the vigor of the crop. It is estimated that in 1 cubic meter of soil, if you count the length of hyphal threads end to end, it is nearly 25,000 kilometers long. So what it is doing is, it is acting as secondary roots to a plant. Plant roots can reach only this much distance, but the mycelia associated with that roots even extend further away and also deeper and fetch nutrients and moisture to the plant. So plant without spending much energy can get good nutrition and moisture. So that is the importance of biostimulants. They ensure that favorable substances and microbes are there around the rhizosphere so that plant roots are very much benefited. And the sixth principle is the importance of organic matter. So organic matter is very important because it has organic carbon, and whatever plant has taken carbon into its body, again it has to be recycled. So the previous crop residues have to be used as mulch. We have to see that organic matter gives best result when it is applied as surface mulch. But when it is incorporated into the soil, it may quickly decompose. It may lose all of the valuable carbon very soon. It is not a good way to improve soil carbon. But whereas if it is applied as surface mulch, gradually the decomposition happens. Soil organisms mix the organic matter with the soil in a slow and steady way, and organic carbon gets into the soil. This is called as bioturbination. So the organisms mix the soil and organic matter together. And also there is a lot of root biomass that is in the soil that we have to leave it there. Around 30% of crop biomass is roots. So all the root system, if we are leaving it there in the soil, eventually it will disintegrate, and the channels that once were occupied by the roots will now be converted as pore spaces, and that will allow a lot of infiltration and water holding capacities. And plant roots also can easily penetrate and establish. So there is a quick growth that is possible. And also if you are applying mulch on the surface of the soil, it gives protection from harsh temperatures and rainfall effect, so that all the soil life, without any interruption, they are leading their life and taking part in natural processes. And one more thing that is very important in understanding organic matter is that 1 gram of organic matter requires 1 liter of water in the transpiration process. So lot of water is available in organic matter even though it is in dry situation. So when the organic matter is getting disintegrated, that was used in the synthesis of a organic matter molecule, during the process of decomposition, the water is again released back into the soil. So the organic matter has a lot of moisture that add to the soil. So organic matter is very important, and we should ensure that at least 2 tons of biomass is applied as mulch. And also we should see that farmers should not purchase organic matter for mulching purposes every season. Our cropping planning should be in such a way that there should be lot of organic matter that should be generated for various uses. Some portion can be diverted for fodder purposes, and the remaining can be used for mulching purposes. And the next principle is the use of local seeds. The hybrid seeds and improved varieties are mostly bred to be very fertilizer responsive and to give higher yields. But in natural farming, since there is no use of chemical fertilizers, they are not that responsive because we are not giving chemical fertilizers. But local varieties that are being used by farmers over so many years have a natural vigor because they improve every year because of cross pollination. Their vigor gets improved. So, and local seed are more adaptable to local stresses. They can tolerate them well, like droughts or pests or diseases. So, local seeds are very good in NF context. If we are planning 6 to 8 crops every season and there will be 3 to 4 crops every year, it will be very difficult and economically not feasible for a farmer to rely on external seed. So farmer has to see that all these seeds are recycled. So seed production, use and reuse should happen, and external seed dependency should be avoided. We should aim at seed sovereignty at farmer level. And the next principle is the pest management. With lot of crop diversity, already the pest load will be reduced. Even then, there are very dependable solutions, very promising solutions for pest management without the use of pesticides. And there are several strategies like how do you prevent pests by means of good crop design, where you have barrier crops, trap crops, and some crops act as good habitat for natural enemies to control the pest population. And also we can employ pheromone traps which can help us in monitoring the load of important pests. And also there are botanical pesticides that are ovicidal in nature, larvicidal in nature, like Neemastra, Agniastra, Brahmastra. They can be very good alternatives for chemical pesticides. And finally, no use of agrochemicals like pesticides, weedicides and fertilizers. Pesticides eliminate all the weak and sensitive pests and only strong pests remain which cannot be killed by pesticides. Only that population, strong pest population, will multiply, and eventually any pesticide, any strong pesticide will also not work on that. And also pesticides has a tendency to improve the fecundity of the pests. So lot of egg laying will happen, lot of population buildup can be seen because of the use of pesticides. And also pesticides, they destroy non-target beneficial organisms like honeybees, wasps and egg parasites, which are very beneficial. And pesticides are a well-known reason for lot of health issues, nervous disorders, autoimmune diseases, cancers, and decrease in lifespan and often deaths. Coming to fertilizers, they create nutrient imbalances in the soil. They alter the pH, they make the soil very compact, they change the chemical properties of the soil so that even there are abundant nutrients, they will not be available for the plant. And with our artificial methods of applying nutrients, we can never provide the crops in the proper ratios and balances that are required by the plant. And fertilizers affect the rhizosheath formation. Rhizosheaths are tubular soil coverings around the plant roots. So at that surface, a lot of activity of microbes happen, lot of exchange of nutrient happens, all of that. So now the presence of rhizosheaths is being considered as an important indicator to assessing the soil health. So fertilizer use can affect the rhizosheath formation. And another explanation is that these pesticides and fertilizers, they change the rate of protein synthesis in a plant. So all the raw materials that a plant takes into its system, there is a rate at which it can convert into proteins. But once, if we are applying pesticides or fertilizer, the protein synthesis rate drops down and plant cannot make its own proteins. And the raw materials are available in its plant sap, and then pests and diseases attack the plant to take those raw materials to make their own protein in their body. So healthy plants resists all insect pests and diseases. So these pests and diseases cannot attack healthy plant. If our crop is very weak, our plants are very unhealthy, malnourished, we'll get all the pest and disease problems. So these are, in a nutshell, different principles and practices that are very central to natural farming. So if we are promoting natural farming among farmers, it is important to consider all these principles and try to understand different principles, different processes that are at work. If we see that as many principles are followed, there is very good jump in the productivity of crops. And we have to always look out for whether our soil health is improving or not. Some of the very good soil health indicators are whether our soil is having good water resistant aggregates or not, and whether it is getting darker in color, whether infiltration rate is increasing, which means there is good porosity, and whether it is having good amounts of soil carbon, and whether there are rhizosheaths around the roots, whether fungal populations are dominating, and whether crops are able to grow for longer periods. So all these are very good important indicators that we can look out for. And such a soil will allow crops to grow throughout the year, even in the driest seasons. So if we have to benefit a lot from natural farming way of cultivating crops, we have to go for 365 days green cover. So we have to ensure that living root is there throughout the year, which means no month should be left fallow. Usually from March to May or June, all soils are left fallow. No crop is grown when there is no irrigation. So even in such periods, whether it is possible to grow crops or not, we have to see. Since we have built the soil health a lot, it should be supporting the crop growth throughout the year. So we should aim for 365 days green cover. 365 days green cover ensures that no month is left fallow. Usually in the summer months, through a special practice called pre-monsoon dry sowing, it is possible even to grow crops, that too diverse crop in that drier season. So for that, special practices like seed pelletation, organic matter addition, minimal moisture availability have to be ensured. Seed pelletization is very essential because in the harsh dry months, seed tends to lose viability, or it gets picked up by birds or some ants or some other insect. Pelletization is the process by which a thin layer of coating, which is made of biostimulant bijamrut, clay, some ash, some water, etc., so that it has improved viability. When it is sown in harsh soil also, in the harsh temperature also, it will stay put there. And whenever there is some moisture availability, sparse rain also, it germinates, and not only germinates, it tries to establish. And along with pelletization, a thick mulch should also be there. So these practices ensure that soil is not baking up during the day. So soil is kept cool and quickly it re-radiates the heat, and once germination starts and crop is established, the microclimate changes and the crops tend to absorb water vapor from the air for their moisture needs. So in this way, so many farmers in semi-arid district of Anantapur, which is well known for frequent droughts and crop failures, are able to raise crops throughout the year, a polycropping field. So at this point, I would like to show you one video of one farmer by name Pushpa. She has so many varieties of crops, and the practices that she followed and the timelines and the amount of rainfall received, what is the impact of all the practices over several months by dates is given out in this video. After watching this video, you also are requested to watch how pelletization of seeds can happen. What are the measures that need to be considered, what ingredients to use, what guidance, which seeds are more amenable for pelletization, which seeds doesn't require pelletization. You all can learn from this video. So, how to grow crops with minimal moisture? What is happening? Like we have discussed, the biochemically locked water in the organic matter residue is getting released to help in germination and in the further growth of the plant. And the biostimulant coating around the seed makes mycorrhiza colonize the roots as soon as it germinates. Once it is colonized, it can go to farther distances and spread around very densely and profusely, and increase the soil contact a lot, and all the nutrients that are on the soil surface are accessed by mycorrhiza and then supplied to the plant. So improved soil structure, because a lot of carbon is added through liquid pathway, the soil structure is improved and it holds more water. And when the shoot emerges, when the crop is germinated and established, there is a lot of water in the air. Normally, agriculturally, we see at the rainfall only whatever can be measured in the rain gauge. It is estimated that there is 50,000 ppm of water in the form of water vapor. The surfaces of these crops offer a cool condensing surface for the water vapor, from which it directly absorbs water, or the condensation happens on the plant surface, and water droplets merge, coalesce and go into the soil. So this is how, though visible rainfall is not there to support crop growth, there is abundant water vapor which is used by plants that are grown in natural farming situations. Now we will look into two questions that are most frequently asked. How crops can be grown without chemical inputs or without bulky organic manures? How are nutrients getting into plant system? Because we are not applying tons of compost or vermicompost or anything like that. how nitrogen, phosphorus or some major micronutrients are getting into plant system is one major question. Like we discussed, when soil structure is improving, lot of pore spaces are getting added, which means the soil structure is improving with a lot of porosity. Otherwise, compact soil is now becoming loose and porous. So, nutrients are all held on soil particle surfaces. So, now they are getting exposed. So, lot of nutrients that are available on soil particle surfaces, because of improved structure, they are becoming available. There is lot of increase in soil life, because of which mycorrhizae, bacteria are able to absorb those nutrients and supply it to plants. So we can see that because of improved soil structure, the otherwise unavailable nutrients are now becoming available, and soil life is making that transportation into the plant system possible. And second question is, will yields reduce soon after switching to NF? How do farmers cope with it? To answer this, we have to understand some new parameters also. A farmer does agriculture to get some income, some profits. So our profit should be based on how much expenditure that we are making and how much gross income we are getting. So if we keep our investments low, the margin money improves, that is the net incomes improve. So we have to see whether that is economically profitable or not. When you are comparing conventional method of growing a particular crop and natural farming way of growing the same crop, we have to look into the economics, how much investment was done, what is the yield, what is the market price, what is the net income. When you calculate all this, natural farming will always be on the positive side. There are crop cut experiments that happen on every year in all the districts on at least 10 major crops in Andhra Pradesh. The results show that all the crops yields are higher than conventional, and also the net incomes are very higher than the conventional method of growing crops. And additionally, we have to consider few more parameters like whether this natural farming system is able to increase the overall productivity of the land or not. For example, conventional farmer can grow only two crops, mostly kharif, and if there are some irrigation facilities and residual moisture is there, second crop will be grown. But with natural farming practices, even in rainfed situations also, three crops can be grown. So in a full year, three crops will get more money. And also we are minimizing the risk by following diverse cropping. So there will be a lot of commercial crops, vegetables, all of that instead of a monocrop. So natural farmer is always minimizing the risks and have continuous cash flows in every season. Even in fallow months are also land is not kept vacant and some crop is grown. So you have to look at how much income a natural farming is making from 1 acre of land in 1 year. When you use that kind of metrics, you can see the clear advantage of natural farming results. So in conclusion, we have seen that there is a great need for natural farming, and we learned that what all principles and practices of natural farming will give profitable results. And we also try to understand the natural processes in scientific terms. I would encourage you to go through into further studying of all these processes in greater detail. And we also have learned that it is possible through natural farming methods to raise crops throughout the year, even in driest months, even when irrigation facilities are not there. And also we have tried to answer major questions that are asked on natural farming. So with this, we'll close this session. I wish you all the best and thank you.